I would say find your purpose. Do it with your internal power. That gives you confidence when you use your internal power. And always do it with passion.
All right, guys, so today I'm bringing you Meghan Michael. She's a retired Navy veteran that has a hell of a story about the journey between her and her husband and everything they've done in their, career being in the military. She's taken all that knowledge, packaged it up, and has now started her own business, HR Navigator. This is a hell of a story. I really hope you enjoy the journey, enjoy the conversation. It's going to be a good one. All right, everybody, so this should be a fun one today. I am bringing you Meghan Michael. She told me I could just say Meghan Michael, but I figured I'd have fun with her name. But she jumped on here. She told me she's nervous as hell. No, I'm kidding. About doing this. So I figure I'll have a little bit of fun, harass her as much as possible. So really quick, here's her bio. Meghan grew up in San Jose, California before the dot-com boom and had no idea what the Naval Academy was or what an officer was in the military. Her dad told her if she went to the Naval Academy, he would buy her a car. What 16-year-old girl doesn't want to own her own car? So she applied, and what the heck? She ended up getting accepted. So I could continue reading all this stuff on. She wrote like 20 paragraphs, maybe 25 paragraphs in this. So instead of reading all this, Meghan, just tell me the damn story. Tell me your journey. It's obviously a cool one. Walk me through it all.
Okay, I was a 16-year-old girl growing up in California. I thought that the world stopped and ended at the northern border of California, the eastern border, the southern border, and then, of course, the beach. That's all that existed to me. Grew up just in a great household, 2 great parents, and an older brother who did some really good training for me, teasing me, taunting me, all that kind of stuff. So I was really well prepared for the military. So 16-year-old summer before my senior year of high school, my dad was a high school teacher and football coach who had one of his football players get recruited to the Naval Academy. So being the smart man that he was, he said, hey, there's this place called the Air Force Academy, and you can go there, get a free education. When you graduate, you're an officer in the Air Force, have a job for 5 years, whatever, 6 years, basically pay your way, put yourself through college. And I said, I don't know, where's the Air Force Academy? Again, only California existed in my mind.
Right.
So he told me, obviously, it's in Colorado. And I said, there's no way. It's too cold. There's snow. I can't do that. I'm going to college in Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, somewhere where there's a beach and it's warm. Being pretty smart, he said, well, what about Annapolis? And, of course, again, no clue what that was about. Told me where it was. Oh, it's on the water. So that kind of helped. I said, okay, well, that's nice. It's close to the water. I can do that. It's not quite as cold because it's a little bit more temperate there. So I just started looking into it, just kind of getting in touch with people and trying to figure out what it was all about. Obviously, before the World Wide Web.
Not to age yourself at all.
No, not to age myself at all. But, the only way you found out about colleges was talking to people at college night, writing a letter to the school to get a brochure sent to you. So started looking into it, and I thought, oh, this sounds kind of neat. My brother had done Sea Cadets, and I thought that was kind of cool. But, as a younger teenager, that conflicted with my social life, so I didn't really jump on it. But my dad decided he'd seal the deal and say if I went to the Naval Academy, he would buy me a car. So I went ahead and put in my application, did the whole process, which is it's a lot of paperwork, obviously, and there's more involved. You apply to the school, you apply for nomination, got to go through the whole medical screening process, and did that in a span of basically 2 months, September, October, because I was pretty late figuring this out. I didn't actually end up getting accepted to the Naval Academy right off the bat. I was initially offered a spot to the prep school, which is in Newport, Rhode Island, and I still say it's one of the best kept secrets in the Navy. And basically, once you go there, you just go to class, do your physical fitness stuff, keep your grades up, stay out of trouble, and you're automatically enrolled in the Naval Academy for the next year.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, you enlist in the Navy, you get paid, E1 pay, you got free room and board, so basically the money's all yours, and you're getting paid to go to school is what you're getting paid for. So I didn't get straight into the Naval Academy, which was a little disappointing at first.
Did you still get the car?
I did still get the car.
Okay.
And I actually waited until my junior year at the academy because your first year you don't get to drive, and your second year you only get to drive when you're on leave time or whatever it is. So your junior year is really the first year you get to drive, and I wanted to make sure I had a brand new car. So I held out till junior year, and I did get the car.
Nice. What kind of car did you end up getting?
A very sensible Honda Accord. So,
okay. Right.
which, was great. I had a roommate. One of my roommates was from New Jersey, so we made a lot of road trips up that way. Being from California, I didn't get to go home as much. So Thanksgiving and, long weekends and stuff, we'd usually head to her family's house and eat all her family's food, and her mom would do our laundry and spoil us.
And dude, them folks up there in Jersey, they can eat and they can cook too. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Breakfast especially.
Right. So awesome. So you went through the Naval Academy, and then where'd you end up?
Well, when I first entered into the prep school system, that was before combat exclusion had been lifted. So when I applied, I initially thought I would be doing something like a support ship, destroyer tenders in the Navy, basically support roles, what women were allowed to do, up until the early to mid 90s. But my first year in prep school there, they lifted combat exclusion, or at least a big portion of it, not completely. We know it's been further lifted recently. But, they opened up a lot more opportunities for women. And one of the great things about going there was every summer you get to get out to the fleet and see different parts of the Navy and the Marine Corps. So, one summer you're on a ship, another summer you're in Quantico. I did a summer with a P-3 squadron, or a month with a P-3 squadron, got to do a month overseas in Spain. So there's a lot of different opportunities afforded for you to kind of get a taste of what opportunities are out there. Through process of elimination, I realized I get very, very seasick. So going on a ship was not my number one choice. Submarines were not an option at the time. It might have been okay. I'm not sure how I do underwater.
Yeah, you couldn't have caught me on a submarine. No way in hell.
Yeah, that's pretty tight there.
Yeah.
My 1 month in Quantico was definitely an eye-opening experience. Always respected the Marine Corps. I had a lot of mentors that were Marines. 3 or 4 days out without getting a shower and, running through the mud and quickly. I realized it might not be my speed. So,
right.
So I opted for naval flight officer or navigator in the Navy side of the house. And that was mostly after I did a month with a P-3 squadron out of Brunswick, Maine. And I realized it was a pretty good lifestyle, pretty fun crew mentality, because one of the bigger planes has a bigger crew. And as an NFO, being a backseater, as the pilots like to call us, you actually get the opportunity to become a mission commander, which not all aircraft afford that opportunity to NFOs. So I set my sights.
a naval flight officer, in case.
Naval flight officer, right. Navigators in the Air Force. I don't know they don't have them in the Marine Corps, actually. As my husband likes to remind me, they're enlisted or smart enough to be navigators, so they don't need officers to do it. Nice. So I decided the P-3 was what I wanted to do, and kind of set my sights on that and work toward that opportunity, which isn't a given until you start going through flight school, and you kind of get racked and stacked as based on your grades and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, it worked out. Almost didn't work out. I almost had to go F-14s, which a lot of people say, oh, that sounds terrible. How exciting. But, when you got your mind set on one thing, you definitely, you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. So,
Right.
So I selected P-3s, which are originally anti-submarine warfare aircraft from the Cold War era, that they were really designed to do. And I wanted to go to Hawaii, and I got my squadron out of Hawaii. So that was my first tour in the Navy.
Tough luck. I mean,
I know.
California girl ends up in Hawaii. I mean, and Hawaii is typical of 4-year tour. So did you do all 4 years there?
Well, 3 for us.
Okay.
3 for us as a junior officer. They don't want to leave you there too long. Do typically 2 deployments while you're out there. It actually was interesting because when I went out there, they were closing down Barber's Point, which was the Navy base that the P-3s were on, and they were consolidating us onto Kaneohe Bay, which is a Marine Corps base. So that was kind of an interesting experience for everybody. At the time, I was dating a Marine, so it was no big deal to me, but, not everybody is used to Marines. We'll say that.
We're an acquired taste. I got it.
Yeah. So, and funny story is my very first day I checked into the squadron, the guys had told me, hey, just when you get here, it's kind of a madhouse. There's not a lot of parking on the base. They haven't quite figured out all the infrastructure yet because we don't do that in the Navy and Marine Corps. Only the Air Force figures that out first.
Right.
We just throw everybody there and say, figure it out.
Absolutely.
So when I showed up, he says, park wherever you can find parking. So I parked where everybody else was parked, which was on a big seated grassy area, which apparently in the Marine Corps you're not allowed to do.
Yeah, no, so, you're not on grass at all.
Exactly. Well, even if it doesn't look like grass, if it's one sprout of grass coming up, that's a seated grassy area. So I walk in, I go do my check-in, and get the stamp, and they say, okay, go start looking for a place to live. So I walk out to my car, and there's, Lance Corporal standing right there, writing me a ticket.
Welcome to Hawaii.
Welcome to Coney. And, he was a nice guy. I tried to talk my way out of it, and you could tell he was kind of like, oh, man, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. And, finally he's like, general's orders, this has been going on for a while, I guess. And, the base general got a little PO'd about it. So sent out the poor Lance Corporal to write tickets on everybody. So my first day in the squadron, I got a parking ticket.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thankfully, I kept it clean after that. But
I didn't do so well in my 4 years. It was more than one. So I'm a slow learner, but it's okay.
Thankfully, with 2 deployments, I was only actually there for 2 years. So, figure you got to spread those things out.
Right,
right. But yeah, so I did a tour in Hawaii, did 2 deployments while I was there, got married while I was out there. I guess that would have been August of 2001. And obviously, so my first deployment was Asia, kind of a standard P3 deployment, just kind of fly around all over Asia. A lot of trips to Thailand. And then the second deployment, we were actually scheduled to go to the Middle East already. It was kind of a normal routine deployment for P3s. They've been doing this deployment since the 80s, really. And then 9/11 happened, so that obviously changed everything. So we went from kind of a certain cycle of training to a completely different focus between September and then November when we were scheduled to deploy. Obviously, deployment got moved up a little bit. We all took off. Yeah. Fortunately, the squadron that was out there didn't want to leave, actually, because things had kind of just started. If you recall, kind of took a little, month or 2 to kind of get things going. They were kind of wanting to be there to get in the fight, I guess. And, we were all kind of chomping at the bit to get out there. So it actually, worked out pretty well. So that deployment we deployed to Bahrain, Oman, and Diego Garcia, if those places ring a bell.
Yeah.
And basically, when you were up in Bahrain and Oman, you were doing a lot of Gulf and Afghanistan overflights. And then when you were in Diego, you were doing a lot of flights around the island protecting all the bombers. People didn't know, a lot of the bombers were down in Diego Garcia that used to go up and fly over Afghanistan. So it was an awesome deployment, to be able to go out and do your job and do it, I guess, in a real world situation. And I kind of like to put it in perspective for people of how busy we were at the time. And, not everybody obviously has been there or deployed over there, but this was in the early stages, so it was very chaotic. Flying over Afghanistan, the airspace looked like, I don't even know how to describe it. Someone showed me a picture once. There's just aircraft stacked upon aircraft in the airspace, and it's amazing that there wasn't, more accidents.
Right.
But so in the 6.5 months that I was deployed there, I got more flight hours in that 6.5 months than I had up until that point of deployment in my career. Wow. So it was a lot of flying, but that's great when you're in aviation because you want to fly. You want to do your job.
Right.
So it was an amazing experience. We flew a lot especially for the overland Afghanistan, we'd fly with Marines, and we started out with the Marines, but then they transferred out and the SEALs came in, and we'd usually fly with one of them on board. And, we just did a lot of we were a lot of eyes on, basically, for the troops on the ground. So really cool experience talking to, the guys on the ground, real world, and, they're depending on you to see stuff, obviously, that they can't see, miles away from them. if you ever watch that show, Navy SEALs, and they're watching on those cameras.
Right.
In the operations center, talking to the guys on the ground. That's basically kind of what we were doing, but in the plane.
Right, right.
So super cool, really exciting deployment. And then afterwards came back and checked out of the squadron. So it was kind of a great end to, my first tour active duty wise.
Nice.
So fast forward, went to San Diego next, did a instructor job teaching in a classroom. That was the first time my husband and I got to be together, actually live in the same place, same city. So we'd been married for over a year when he finally got there. Let's see, I think it was two months later, January of 2003, they said, all right, you're going to Iraq for him. So off he went on his deployment. And I will say, because I've been on both sides of the coin, I've deployed and then I've been the spouse left behind. It was a lot harder to be the spouse left behind, right, personally. Even though I could do things like go on the classified network and talk to them, when comms were blacked out or whatever, still it's, you're kind of sitting there going, what's going on? And, they were embedding news reporters so you could see everything that was going on TV. And, I told him when he came back, I said, I don't like being the spouse left behind. I would much rather go. So, it was an interesting learning experience being, a spouse.
Right.
So, anyway, so he came back and, we did our tours in San Diego. He was a C-130 pilot in the Marine Corps. So he was stationed at the squadron out there in Miramar, and I was...
which is one of the most uncomfortable planes in the world to ever be a passenger in.
I've been on one. Yes, yes, I agree. It's bumpy back there, and if you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick in a C-130.
Yes.
So, so we were just enjoying a great life once he got back in San Diego and decided to start a family. So we started a family there. I went back to school, got my master's degree while I was there. And then we both decided to leave active duty in the same month, actually, which is not a good plan. I always tell people.
How many years had you had in at that point?
When I decided to leave, I had 8, and he left with 14. So
okay, I'm going to say this politely. That was dumb.
Well, so here's what happens though when you're both in a heavy deployable job, and I'm sure you understand this.
Yeah.
And you're trying to start a family and have some consistency to your life is, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? Whose family is going to step up and watch kids? Well, and I know plenty of families do it. We just decided that it wasn't for us. And actually, truth be told, I said I was quitting first. So he copied me and quit and decided to quit after. It just happened that we both left the same month when we did eventually get out. But so we had a young child living in San Diego, and he came home one day and said, FedEx is hiring. That's my dream company. I'm going to get out. And I said, this is not a good plan. Thankfully, it worked out. He was able to get hired and, went right into training straight off of active duty. And I went into the reserves at that point, into the Navy Reserves, and we moved back to Pensacola, Florida.
Okay.
So easy commute for him up to Memphis, which is where FedEx hubs out of, and he could drive back and forth if he needed to. We had friends in the area, kind of place where we'd both been stationed before, so we were comfortable in that area. Plus, the cost of living was a lot more reasonable than San Diego.
Right.
So we went back there. Everything was going well, and about 6 months into my reserve duty, I came home and said, I'm going to apply to go back on active duty. And he's like, okay, sounds like a great idea. So I applied. Luckily enough, I got picked up. But of course, there was not a job to be had in Pensacola, Florida. In true military style, we're going to move you all the way back across the country again.
Of course.
Yeah. So barely over a year in Pensacola, Florida, we were back in California. And I was on active duty. So when I came back on active duty, I switched from aviation to human resources, partly because I had a master's in it, which helped obviously getting selected for it. And also, it just kind of helped with the family lifestyle with a spouse who travels all the time. Picked up human resources and came back on active duty, and I bounced from California to Washington State down to Tennessee, Millington, Tennessee, which is, believe it or not, there is Navy in Millington, Tennessee. A lot of people are like, why is the Navy in Tennessee? One of the headquarters for the Navy is down there. So it's actually it's a pretty good size
that
base.
makes a lot of sense. It's close access to the ocean and the ships and everything else.
You know what's interesting is, so my father-in-law was air crew in the 50s, Navy enlisted air crew, and he went through his aviation training in Millington, Tennessee.
Really?
So it used to be a really large aviation training base down there. And when that all kind of shut down, and they moved everything to Pensacola for aviation, they had to kind of keep some stuff there to keep, the community is really dependent upon the military in a lot of places. So they shifted some of the headquarters functions out of Washington, D.C. down into Millington.
Wow.
So there's a pretty good, in the Marine Corps, they have monitors, tell you where you're going. We call them detailers in the Navy, and Millington is where all the detailers are. So there's a lot of headquarters functions down there. So I did that job. I was lucky to get selected for promotion, which I really wasn't counting on. I thought I would just come back and do my 20, and whatever pay grade I made, awesome. I'll be happy, get my 20. So they said, congratulations, you're getting promoted. Now you need to leave. So, so they said, well, you're going to go be a CO of a reserve center. So they gave me they give you a list, here's all your choices. And we opted to come up to the Midwest. My husband's from Michigan, and, we kind of been all around the coast and, thought, well, we haven't been up here. It'd be nice to be kind of close to his family for a while. We'll go up here. We'll do this for 2 years. We'll go back to Tennessee. I'll go get another HR job there, maybe become a civilian, work for the government, tons of jobs down there. But then when it came time to leave after 2 years, of course, the Navy said, no, you can't go where you want to go. We want you to go to D.C. So I decided just to retire at that point. So I stayed in.
How many years did you have at that point?
20 years.
Right. How many moves did you do in 20 years? Because I want to put this in perspective so civilians that are listening to it understand this.
Including flight school?
Sure.
Okay, because you move a lot during flight school. They move you around. So Pensacola, Texas, Jacksonville, Hawaii, San Diego, back to Pensacola, San Jose, Washington, 10.
Yeah, because my brother did 24 years, and his wife did almost all 24 with him. 19 moves in 24
That's
years.
a lot. Yeah.
19 moves. So.
It could have been more. I lucked out in a couple places and actually made it to 3 years instead of, a lot of times might just be 2 years in one location.
Right.
Or if you're going to a school, it might only be 1 year. You're in that spot for that year of school. Yeah, so kind of figured out when we moved here, and my daughter, the one who'd been born in San Diego, she was going into 5th grade, and it's her 3rd elementary school, and I'm thinking, how many more moves am I going to make this kid do? And then, they start to get to that age where it gets tougher to make friends and, things like that. So
right.
We lucked out. We moved into a great community and great neighbors. Kids have good friends, go to good schools.
And now you go from flight rock star CEO position to Susie Homemaker.
Yes, I am. I call myself Commander-in-Chief Sink House, which I've always been, of course, but I love it. I enjoy it. I feel like I'm so lucky that I can do this now. And my kids are at the age where they're a lot of fun. 13 and 11, they have some pretty quirky, fun personalities. And, it's just fun to watch them grow into young adults. They're in that stage right now where they're starting to have opinions and debate with us, and it's just nice to be around and not be busy with full-time military job and really be here and be present for them. So.
Well, I think that's one of the cool things that a lot of people don't see about the military is you can have a complete career, retire, and enjoy almost like a second life.
Yes.
As long as you can put up with all the shit that comes with the military lifestyle. I mean, everybody who's listened to the show knows that I did my 4 and got the hell out as quick as I could. So good on you for lasting that long.
Yeah. Well, and you're feeling, and I tell everybody, I had sailors coming in, and we had Marines too at my reserve center. It's usually a Navy and a Marine reserve center together. So I talk to a lot of the guys and gals, and whether you're doing 4 years or 8 or 16 or 20 or whatever you decide to do, veterans are such a small percentage of our population now that you're truly unique. I don't think anybody should ever downplay. Hear people say, oh, I only did this. I only did this much. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's a lot more than, millions of other people have ever done.
Yeah, what's interesting to me on that point is there's a lot of times I'll be in a room, even, if I'm the speaker in front of the room doing an engagement, and I'll ask them, all the veterans to stand up. And you can have a room of 200 people and like 3 people stand up that are veterans. And it always floors me how few people serve. And I'm not knocking people that didn't serve. It's just, to your point, it is a very, very small community.
It is. And again, my point too, like I said, all the folks I've ever met, they might come in, they're brand new in the military and they're like, I'm just going to do my 4 years and get some benefits or whatever, and then figure out what I want to do and move on. And it's like, okay, great. You're going to get some experiences that majority of the population will never have. And you'll make friends that you will keep in touch with no matter how many years pass or whatnot. There's always still people that you kind of keep in touch with from those days.
Right.
So it's a pretty cool fraternity, sorority, whatever you want to call it, to be a part of.
I think it's just the badass club. So it is nothing like college.
No, I mean, and I didn't go to a normal college either.
Me either.
I know my husband, he did for, a couple years. He went to kind of a party school for his first couple years, and then he realized he wasn't getting very far, so he switched schools. Got out of town too.
So what are you doing now with everything? I know you're doing more than just being Susie Homemaker, but what are you doing now? What is this chapter of your life opened up and doing?
So when I retired, I said I was going to give myself some time off, and I always tell people when you're transitioning, whether it's just your 4 years or retirement or whatever. Because remember, I transitioned once before, and I was not. I tell people I wasn't very successful at it, and I like to share.
Well, you were so bad that you went back to the military. So
I was. I tell people I failed at being a stay-at-home mom. And no kidding. I mean, it's hard to be home all day with an infant or a toddler. I mean, they will test your patience more than any sailor or Marine. I don't care what people say.
Well, I think my wife says the same thing about me. I mean, if we're home all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to go to work to find some sanity.
Right.
So it wasn't so much, I think it was more my mindset the first time transitioning and also to that time frame, I think 2005 time frame, things were still really hot and heavy with Afghanistan and now Iraq. And so, in your mind, you're coming off active duty and you're like, I did all this super cool stuff and nobody understands what you're talking about. They just cannot relate to it. So I just kind of struggled with that transition. And so it was actually just the easy button to go back in the military. It really was. It was easier to do that than to really tough it out and duke it out and try to find a job or start a business or whatever. And that's why you see so many veterans, they don't stay in their first job. So many veterans start their own business because they can't relate to their employers. And so many go back to school because they just don't know what the heck to do. And they've got the benefits. So they say, I'll just go to school. It'll give me some time to figure it out. So this time around, I was a little smarter. I'd been planning for retirement since I came back on active duty. And that is more the mindset than anything else. The financial aspect to it. There's the, what do you want to do kind of thing. It's just the personal mindset for transition. So I gave myself permission to take a break. And for me, take a break meant not look for a job, not put the pressure on myself to do anything big and just enjoy my family and the time. If I wanted to go volunteer at the kids' school at the drop of a hat, I could do it. I could do what I want, when I want, really for the first time in my life. So I think that mental shift of just allowing myself to slow down was the first thing.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to just take a break for a year. I'm going to enjoy the school year with the kids, be Susie Homemaker, be the mom Uber, all this stuff. And my husband said, I give you 6 months before you're bored out of your mind. So I said, okay, we'll see. And it was actually about December time frame when I said, I think I'm going to go take a small business class and just kind of see what that's all about. I took the class in December before the holidays, and then I kind of tabled it for the holidays and just enjoyed the family. And then afterwards, I kind of sat down and started brainstorming, what are my skills? What can I do for a business? And I spent about probably January to March formulating a plan of I want to get out and work with small businesses on employee retention. So just real basic stuff. And that was a lot coming from my experience.
Well, just for the record, just to go back, 4 years or 20 years, employee retention is not small stuff. That's actually
well, I guess what I'm saying, as a HR, go out and market myself as an HR, and there's just so many things that fall under HR. It could be performance management, it could be benefits, it could be, there's just a lot of stuff. So I said, I'm just going to focus on this one little area of employee retention. And I really came to that idea because I was thinking about my experience in the Navy. As a commanding officer, I was actually graded on how good my retention was. That was actually, when they come in, you get looked at for inspections, is how good is your retention? And I'm thinking, if I can retain sailors without being able to give them money because I don't have the bonuses to give them, I'm just trying to be creative and make this place the coolest place that they don't want to leave my command. That they're going to be excited to come here and work here, and they won't want to leave. So I thought, I kind of have a lot of ideas how to be creative, and it was interesting to me. Spent a lot of time talking to sailors and, really getting to know them and what drives them to be happy at work and want to go to work. And, when you're on a shore command or, you're kind of just going to this office building every day, it kind of can get a little Groundhog Day-ish. And
that's a great way of putting it.
It really is. It's like Groundhog Day, and you don't get all the money because you're not the deploying unit. The deploying units get more of the money. So you're doing a lot more with a lot less. So you really just have to be creative and think outside the box, but stay legal, right? So you don't get in trouble. So it just really narrowed it down to that retention plan. So I was working on that, for January, February, but I wasn't really feeling it. It was like, okay, this is kind of boring. Just wasn't really getting me excited about getting out there. And one day I don't know if I was in a Facebook group or if I was on LinkedIn or where I was, but I started to think about everybody tells veterans when they leave the service, okay, you got to do your resume. You got to translate it to civilian skills. You got to sit down and practice interviewing. You can't talk like you're in the military. People don't understand you, blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking, man, I remember going through transition class twice. Same story both times. They're helping you with all this stuff. And there's a lot of resources out there. There's free resources. You could pay somebody to write your resume. There's a lot of mentoring programs. And I thought there's really not a lot for businesses. So if I'm a business owner and I want to hire veterans, how the heck do I even learn about veterans if I don't know any? So I transitioned that over to basically a company that targets small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, on how to attract, recruit, and retain veteran employees. So nice. I'm an educator, I guess. I'm a consultant, but my goal is to educate these other businesses that want to hire veterans and how to keep them.
Very cool.
So that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Very cool.
For my business.
Because a couple things there. One, the military flat out sucks at transitioning veterans, period. Their courses, all the stuff they have, they do not prepare veterans. And I'll speak 100% about my own transition. By the time I hit a civilian, I still had no idea what the hell I wanted to be when I grew up. And
I still don't know.
And they don't give you the real actionable tools. I had the base commander for the Joint Reserve Base here in my hometown on an earlier episode, and one of the things that he even said after 31 years, he still had no clue what his skills or how they translated to the civilian world. So the fact that you're not tackling it from the veteran side and you're tackling it from the employer side is huge, because now it's educating them on how do they understand what's going on in the mindset of a veteran.
Right.
Which is a huge perspective. So
there's some businesses that have figured this out. Amazon is one of my favorite companies to reference. The story goes they accidentally hired a lot of veterans back in the 90s, and then they realized that, oh, we have a bunch of veterans, because the veterans started getting together and coming up with ideas and proposing ideas to make things better, because that's what they're used to doing, right? You're used to being out there, you're given a mission, you don't have all the resources, how do you do it?
And a lot of times you have zero resources and still have to figure it out.
Exactly. You still you gotta make something happen. So they realized it kind of through accident, I guess. And, they really built upon that, and they actually have a military recruiting department. So they've got employees that their whole job is recruiting, military veterans.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of my really good friends just got hired in October, and I've spent quite a bit of time talking with him about it, and now he's going into that department. When I hear a friend of mine that says, hey, I'm interested in Amazon, now I just shoot them right over to there. I'm not a headhunter or a placement agency, but they've got it figured out. They've got it wired. Now, granted, they're a huge company.
Well, there could be a business there. I'd call my buddy up and say, hey, at least give me a finder's fee or something.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You kind of find yourself getting, involved in all these different there's these fingers going out everywhere with these things. But yeah, but because I feel like the market's flooded with, veteran resources, I really wanted to focus on the business side of the house. And I really wanted to target small to medium businesses because I live in a very patriotic area, here in Northwest Ohio. Ohio is actually the sixth largest state for veteran population, believe it or not. So there's a lot of veterans in Ohio, but there's a lot of small businesses that just don't have the exposure to veterans and want to hire veterans. They just don't know how to even start the process. So this is just kind of what I've learned as I've been out networking and talking to business owners. And I want to help educate, really, is the number one thing, and help people understand that every veteran is as unique as they are an individual. There's a lot of bias and, misconceptions, and I want to help kind of make that go away as well, because, even veterans that have PTSD, anxiety, disabilities, this, that, and the other are still employable. They still have a lot of skills that they bring to the table that are amazingly unique. And I tell people, I had sailors and Marines with all these things.
Right, right.
Everybody has trouble. Everybody has problems. As a leader and as a business owner, is how you work through those.
100%. That's awesome. And I think as long as enough people keep attacking it from both sides of the table, there'll be some solutions that come up, because everything they've done so far hasn't worked. Enough shit hasn't been slung against the wall to finally figure out, okay, how do we get this to work? So eventually somebody's going to come up with that golden nugget that fixes this entire transitional problem.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, it's going to get a little more difficult because just the number of veterans is decreasing. Due to the size of our armed forces decreasing over time, we are becoming a smaller and smaller population, which means less and less exposure, to folks, unless they, have a cousin, have a, uncle, how it all goes. My cousin did this or, whatnot, but they don't keep in touch with that person. They don't really know what they've experienced, and they don't talk about it, which is interesting.
Right.
It's one thing I've learned very recently is my kids don't know what I've done.
Right.
We don't talk about it at home, about the experiences I had deploying or what my husband did. We just don't talk about it. Not because we're trying to hide anything. So, one day talking about something, my son said, I didn't know you did that. And I said, yeah, I did that. And he goes, why don't you tell me that? And I'm going, well, why would I tell you? You're 11. I mean, it doesn't flow in the
same token, though. I think that's a huge statement and I think that's part of the reason I bring so many veterans on my show is, well, one, I'm a veteran, but two, I think that a lot of people just don't understand the world. I mean, there's a ton of very patriotic people in this world that don't know what happens. And I've had my fair share of meeting the unpatriotics as well, from having Marine Corps stickers ripped off my truck and crazy things like that. Even to the point that I tell people all the time, my first real corporate job, one of the top executives in the company told me, don't tell anybody you're a veteran. So it's just crazy things like that. I've experienced both sides of it, but veterans have to become a voice for veterans.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, for us.
Absolutely.
So the more you keep pushing and telling your story, the better. I also know you have kind of a fun area about women and girls and that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, when I joined the military, there wasn't a lot of women. If you look at data, the percentage of females in the military has increased substantially.
I mean, just to give it perspective, when I was based on Lejeune, and I could be off on these numbers, but it was something like 20,000 to 1 was the ratio of women.
Probably, and again, Marine Corps to other services.
It's just a lot slower. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some differences. But for example, just when I entered the Naval Academy, it was about 9 to 10% women. So, you got about 4,200 to 4,400 midshipmen and 400 women. Now they're up to like 25%. And in, again, in different areas of the military, some are higher female population based on, the job and things like that. But obviously because of that, I didn't have very many female role models in my career path. As a matter of fact, when I checked into my squadron, we had about 65 aviators between pilots and NFOs, and there was only one other female NFO, naval flight officer. There was no female pilots because the first ones were just coming through in about 95, 96, and I got there in 99.
Right.
So not very many at that point. But I didn't really care, to be honest. As I said, I grew up with an older brother, and my dad was a coach, so I was always around football players, rugby players, soccer players. Sports played a big role in my upbringing, and so I was just used to being around a lot of males. So it just never really dawned on me that there wasn't a lot of females. I didn't care, and honestly, I thought it was kind of cool to do something that not a lot of women had done yet. And I wanted to be better than the boys. I guess I saw it as a challenge. I can do everything you can, and I'm going to do it better. Maybe I was just psyching myself up. I don't know. But again, not very many female role models. And some of the aviators that had gone through, they were doing more of the support things like helicopter search and rescue pilots and things like that. So there were some females flying and things like that. So again, just not very many. Shortly after I got to the squadron, 2 more females showed up. We had a pilot and another NFO. So I think we got to an all-time high of 5 at one point, maybe. Out of 65-ish to 70. But again, I really thought of all the guys as my brother, my brothers. I went to all the events where all the spouses were, and I introduced myself and said, think of me as a sister. There was some fear. Some of the spouses were afraid. Why is this girl with our husbands and deploying? And I understand all that.
We always kind of referred them to it, and don't take offense. It was just, the women were just kind of dudes with long hair. I mean, you guys get so ingrained with us and everything that we did. And I had my 4 years, I had maybe 2, maybe 3 women the entire time that I was in the Corps. So we weren't around them a whole lot, but you couldn't treat them any different because they were going through the same shit we were going through on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like I said, it was just never a big deal to me. At the academy, people would come and visit. People tour there, and it's an exciting thing to go see, I guess. We just all couldn't wait to get out.
Right.
And you'd walk down the street and they'd say, oh, look, a girl won. And you're like, what? This is stupid. We're just midshipmen like all the other ones. A point being that it never really mattered to me, female, male, do your job. I'm happy. And I know it's
at the end of the day, a shitbag's a shitbag. I mean,
exactly. It's true. And a superstar is a superstar.
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't matter male or female, 3 eyeballs or not, purple, you get the point. So I've just always really focused on performance, personally doing a good job and setting a good example for people to follow. And it doesn't matter where you come from, how you got there, what you look like, but you do your job better than anyone expects, and people will respect you for that. So I focus on that with my own children. I have 1 girl and I have 1 boy. They get the same treatment. It's all about doing your job.
Do you just give them a pair of boxing gloves and tell them to go out back and just duke it out? I mean,
actually, they actually get along pretty well, believe it or not. I think it's the moving every few years that they kind of, became friends. And
well, yeah, I mean, they have to. They have to.
They have to, but they have their moments, of course. Every kid, all siblings do. But it's just something I really feel is important for women and girls to understand is don't worry about whether you've got a role model or a mentor that looks like you. Find the person that accomplished what you want to accomplish and make that your mentor, make that your role model because 100%. Because they've accomplished what you want. So why would you not emulate that?
I tell people all the time is go find that person that's already carved the trail, ask them how they got there, catch them, and then pass them. Right.
Exactly.
And then start carving your own trail.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and your path or my kid's path is going to be different. Even if they're trying to accomplish what I accomplished and more, their path is going to be a little bit different because their experiences are going to be different.
Right.
Just like you or I trying to, emulate some billionaire, whatever, making lots of money. But yeah, that's kind of, what I really, want my kids to understand. And anybody that I come in contact with is don't make it so much about all that other stuff. Make it about where you're going.
Right.
Not about where you were. Yeah. Remember where you come from. It's always important. But, so you can see how far you've come, but make it about where you're going.
Right. Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The cool thing about you jumping on the show with me is there's nothing really to promote. You're not trying to put your business out there a whole lot. You really just wanted to come out and share a message, which is really cool. And you didn't sound nervous at all.
Well, once you get me talking, it's kind of hard to get me to stop. So.
Right. No, you did awesome. One of the greatest things I love to ask everybody at the end of this is if you could leave a message for other people as they go on their journey and you could give them a phrase or a saying or a thought that they could carry as their torch on their journey, what would you tell people to use or carry on with them as they go through their journey in life?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I would say find your purpose. Do it with your internal power. That gives you confidence when you use your internal power, and always do it with passion, because all of those things combined, I think, make you authentic and genuine in what you do. And you might not make billions of money or dollars, but you're going to be satisfied with what you've done. And for me personally, it works because at the end of the day, it's the legacy I leave behind with the people that I've somehow impacted in a positive way.
That's
Purpose,
awesome.
Power, and passion.
That's awesome, dear. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with it. It was awesome having you on the show, and I didn't pick on you too much. You didn't cry or anything, so it was a good episode. You told me that before. Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this badass episode. I love doing these. I love to hear people's stories and journeys, but what I love most is if you can comment, if you share, if you can tell your friends about this podcast, that would mean everything to me.